Good morning, folks. Councilman Rasmussen here, coming to you with our update, my update from the council meeting on May 15th. I'm a day later than I normally do this because yesterday morning presented some challenges, but sorry about that. So, first off, on general updates, all of some stuff from the town tidbits. If you're not getting it yet, make sure you sign up. I'll say that every time. The Smyrna at Night is coming up quick. June 17th is the date. There's a lot of last minute planning and figuring out the little details that are going on for that. So make sure it's on your schedule for June 17th. It runs from noon when the music starts till a little bit finishing up just around 10 p.m. Lots of bands, 3 stages. There's going to be food trucks and vendors and all sorts of cool stuff. So make sure it's on your schedule. Also, First Fridays kicked off the beginning of May. So May 5th was the first of our First Fridays. Chief said we had about 200 people come out and see the bands, which is awesome. Unfortunately, we were away for a wedding that weekend, so I didn't get to attend. But we'll be coming out to the next ones. These are every First Friday through September. Through September 1st. So that's June 2nd, July 7th, August 4th, and September 1st. It runs from 6 to 8 p.m. out on Main Street. Food, drinks, cool music. As long as the weather holds out, it's a great day. So hope to see you out at some of those. As far as the agenda items and the meeting from Monday night, we actually had so every year when we put out the tax assessments, folks who, if they want to, if they have questions about it or they'd like to contest their tax assessment, they can actually submit a written request and then come to council or a committee of council, so 3 members, Councilwoman Forbes, Councilwoman Gott, and myself, and make an appeal. So we held that appeals hearing just before the regular council meeting. For most of the folks who show up, it's a little bit of confusion. I think that people see when there's a change in their assessment, they assume that their taxes are going up the equivalent of the change. In one of the cases, somebody had a change in their assessment of their house of $1,100. They thought that meant their tax went up $1,100. And it doesn't. It means their tax went up about $5.17. And so communicating that and talking about that, I think, made most of the things. And there was at least one challenge from one of our newer homeowners communities that has just been formed last year and ended up with a couple of fees for grass mowing that they really didn't know how to take care of, and we're asking that if we would waive those fees with the understanding that they now have an HOA in place or getting there, and they understand that the grass upkeep around their retention pond is their responsibility and not the town's. So a little bit of confusion, really nothing big that came out of that, and nothing that wasn't supported by the members of the committee and put forward to council. So, but a quick little meeting, 20 minutes right before the other meeting. As far as general agenda items, there weren't really a lot of updates except for Smyrna at Night is coming and some of the little work things that are happening around the town. There was no old business on our thing. We had no presentations this time around. So we really just sort of jumped right into new business items. The first one that we talked about is a conversation that the mayor wanted to have around strategic planning. And really this is, we need to be maybe operating a little bit differently so that we make sure that all council members are engaged in different ways. One of these was figuring out what we might need to change about some of our committees. Probably the most significant change is that we're going to do away with 2 of the formal committees. One, the finance committee, we're actually going to make that a committee of the board, and it's going to meet every second meeting of the month, right before the normal council meeting. And all the council members are going to be on that committee. It's a public meeting. Everyone can obviously attend. But that way, all of the council members are part of that finance meeting rather than having it be a separate committee and in wrestling with some confusion and communication between the finance committee and the town council. We're also going to do away with the utility committee because in a lot of cases that sort of happens the same way, whereas almost everything that goes to the utility committee is something that really needs to be discussed by council. And so we're going to integrate those 2 into this sort of operations committee that's going to be meeting before our second town meeting every month. Not many other changes. A few things about sort of, who should be on which committees and some stuff like that. But overall, just more organizational type of conversation. But the plan is to try and have some more throughout the year, some more strategic planning meetings where we can address some of the longer range plan items. We did also create a pension committee. So that's myself, Councilwoman Gott, and Councilman Presley, I believe, are all on that pension committee to meet quarterly to go over all of our pension obligations and make sure that we are doing what we should be doing, which is catching up, getting where we need to be to make sure our pensions are as fully funded as possible. One of the things that the mayor pointed out is that, and I've gotten this question about the worry about a fully funded pension system, and the reality is most pension systems aren't fully funded. It's a goal. It's someplace that we want to get to. It's not like we're the only ones out there that haven't fully funded our pension in some way. We want to be there. It makes sense for us to do the work to actually try to get there. There's no risk in our pension system not being fully funded when it comes to the actual people receiving a pension, because what it means is that the town has to make up out of the current year budget whatever shortfall there is in our pension system. And it's more expensive, basically. Fully funding your pension system is the cheapest way to fund your pensions, versus paying those pensions out of your operating budget for the year that you're currently in. So in 20 years from now, it's way easier to fund a pension and get interest on it today, and then pay that money out in 20 years than it is to actually pay that out of your budget 20 years from now. So there were a couple of ordinances that were on our agenda for last night. One is to clarify the standards around waste container enclosures. So this is a change that has been sort of evolving over the last year. The code has always said that you have to have your waste containers or garbage containers contained or blocked off in some way. Some folks leave them in front of their house. That's against the code. So the question was what to do about that. We started doing more enforcement around those, and then found that people came up with ways to pretend or to say that their containers were enclosed when they really didn't meet the intent of the code. So there's a clarification about what you actually have to do in order to enclose your waste containers. And that's going to go through 3 readings. This was the first one. There was a question that I raised because there was some confusion about how it applied to commercial versus residential properties. So that's going to be a little bit of clarification that'll probably come back in the second reading. There may be a change that's necessary, but it'll likely be small. We had the third reading of the ordinance to require repayment agreements for priority utility accounts. These are folks who have a medical reason why we can't shut off their power if they don't pay their bill. But some people have used that as simply a way to never pay their bill, even though they're able to do so. They have to be making an effort, and there has to be some sort of a repayment agreement in place for them. It's not just free electricity because you have a note from your doctor. And so we need to clarify in the code exactly how that's, and we have now, after 3 readings, clarified in the code of exactly what that process needs to look like so that people who are trying to take advantage of the system are no longer able to do so. We did have a modification or a request from this came from the Duck Creek Library through their engineering firm and their architectural firm. It's already gone to planning and zoning. There needs to be some slight roadway modifications to the property or to the roads that provide both access to the front and the rear of the new proposed library. One of these is just better markings to make sure that people understand it's a one-way road and that it's a fire lane, and so there'll be markings on the ground, some better signage, things like that. Another is one of the roads that right now is actually a one-way road will actually need to turn into a two-way road to provide rear access. There are some properties that have rear access behind where the new library would be. These are properties typically fronting onto East Commerce Street. They need access to the back of their buildings, so they need in and out from that road, and it also acts as a fire lane to make sure that there's enough room to get the fire trucks back there should they be necessary. Small modifications, but it was just one of these pieces that the council needed to approve to make sure that they were able to move forward with those as part of their final plan design. And they were supported by the council. Couple of little things, reappointments or appointments. Marie Fontaine St. Pierre was reappointed to the Board of Adjustments. Michael Reed was reappointed to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And Joanne Maston was appointed to the Redevelopment Authority. All pretty easy ones. The council did have a vote to, as I mentioned earlier, the request from an HOA to waive some fees associated with some mowing that happened last year. The council voted to support that. And then with that in place, we approved the final assessment list. So this is the assessment list where it'll go out to everybody to, this is what your tax base will be run on. Those are the major things where there were action items. There was an additional conversation. Councilwoman Gott asked the question about whether or not there was interest in having the state auditor take a look at some of our books and processes. So every year, the state or the town is required to conduct a full audit. We have auditing firms that do this. It's something that we pay for. This last year, we changed our auditing firm, and things that had been they had all been in the previous audits, but they hadn't been sort of brought up or raised up in level of priority, came up this year. And so we had additional conversations that we haven't had before in the years that I've been on council about some of the things that we need to look at or need to be doing. If you've not been through one of these audits, it's not just like an audit of the accounts and the books, but they look at your policies and procedures, how you operate, what sort of, and really focused on the financial things, but it covers a pretty broad spectrum of stuff. We had some questions about, how we were accounting for certain funds coming in, were things being categorized correctly, and some questions like that. And we've had a couple of good conversations. I think there wasn't a lot of support, there were not enough support to move forward with bringing in, asking the state auditor to take another look at our books. But I think that there is likely support to bring our auditor that we contract back with, and bring him in and asking a lot of questions. The reality is when they present the audit to us, there's very few questions that are asked. In fact, I don't believe anybody asked any questions except for possibly the mayor when the original audit was presented. So people might have more questions that they now have had time to look at things and think about it. And we may ask our auditor to come back in for a work session where we can dig in and ask some more specific questions to try and answer some things that are a little bit outstanding. That was the gist of it. There were, as always, we have public comments that come after that. There was one of the HOAs was there who have approached the town about asking to put in additional light poles in their community. This is Hickory Hollow. The town staff took a look at it and identified, I think it was 13 or so potential places where additional lighting could be installed. The question is cost. It's likely about a $100,000 job in order to put in all of those lights. But we have a bit of a conversation about, well, why aren't the lights in there in the first place? And it comes down to a lot of times, a development that was approved 20 years ago may have had different standards and different requirements for where all the street lights needed to be. So that probably met the code as it was approved 20 years ago, but it may not meet the code today, or just in operations, it may meet the code, but it may not mean that there's light where everybody wants it to be. So the town staff is asked to put together some more formal numbers of what that could look like. And we can at least consider if there are ways to do it. There might be funding options or ways that you could start to tick that off or prioritize it. We'll look at that more, but folks came to ask about some things like that. So that was really it. Again, Smyrna at Night coming up. That's the big thing in the future here. So that's June 17th. Also on June 18th is it's Father's Day. We'll also be having the Juneteenth celebration that day. I think I'll probably be there. I think the mayor's out of town. I'll probably be there saying thank you on behalf of the town for that. And then First Friday is coming up. So Friday, June 2nd is the next one, 6 to 8 p.m. down on Main Street. Hope to see everybody there. As always, if you have any questions, anything I can do for you, please try and reach out. Hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the week. Take care.